5 tools to have around the house to make changing jewelry easier. Coming up next on Body Piercing Basics, episode number 55. So stick around. For those that are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking to you with a level of expertise as someone who has changed thousands of pieces of jewelry and worked with most of these tools, if not all of them. So our goal today is to give you 5 tools that are going to make your life easier when changing jewelry. Before we get too far into it, I do want to say, if you feel like this is something that you're really nervous about or it feels a little bit over your pay grade, never hesitate to go see your piercer and have them change it for you. Usually, most people will do it for free. Some piercers may charge you a small amount to do it. Contact them. See what the deal is. First thing you need to do is you need to determine what type of jewelry you have. There's basically kind of 3 or 4 different styles. The first one being is tension rings, or rings that have tension balls, or captive bead rings as they're commonly called. Basically, this is a ring with a segment on it and a ball that attaches inward. The next type is called seamless or fixed bead or beaded ring. This is designed with a fixed ball that is attached to it or no ball at all. One side will have a slight indentation and the other side will be rounded, and they kind of lock into place. The next kind is when we move into post-style jewelry or threaded or threadless jewelry. Things like circular barbells, labrae studs, standard barbells, and curved barbells. With those, there's kind of 2 different styles of ends. The first style would be threaded, where it actually threads onto the post. The second style being threadless, where there's a piece of wire that comes off the end that kind of holds in place by the tension it has on the inside of that post. The way to determine with that whether or not you have threaded or non-threaded or threadless is if you can spin the ball and it doesn't begin to unscrew or tighten up, that's threadless. If it doesn't, if you spin the ball and it starts loosening or starts tightening, then that's threaded. With threaded jewelry, there's 2 styles. There is a low end, cheap stuff that's externally threaded, where the threading is on the post and the ball threads onto it like a nut. The better quality jewelry is going to be internally threaded, and it's generally what I suggest, and it's going to have a piece of threading that comes off the end that threads into the post. So now you've determined what type of jewelry you have. Let's talk about some of the tools that are going to work with that and make that a little bit easier. First off and foremost, I did list some affiliate links in the description where you can buy these directly. They're not always the best quality because we're going through Amazon, but pretty much all of this is going to work well enough for you to get through what you need to do. Let's talk about tapers. The first one, tapers. Taper pins are a piece of metal that usually one side is thin or a smaller gauge, like for example, let's say it's an 18 gauge taper. So one side would be thin, 22 gauge. The other side would be the gauge you want, 18. There's 3 types of taper pins. There is a type that it has a kind of concave into it, where it's designed for jewelry to set into, especially the tips of rings, because they're usually kind of curved. The next type is called pinned or threadless. It's going to have a section of it that sticks out that's thinner than the thickest point, where you can slide internally threaded jewelry or threadless jewelry onto it, and it will be a little bit more secure and less likely to separate. The other type is threaded. Basically has a piece of threading that comes off that is designed to thread into internally threaded jewelry and make it easy to insert it without any issues. Why would taper pins make your life easier? Here's how taper pins make your life easier. If you have rings, regardless of where the piercing's at, sometimes as it starts to turn, instead of going all the way through, this is really a big thing with nostrils. Instead of going all the way through, it'll start to turn into the piercing without going out that hole on the inside. A taper pin can be used for the right size, 18 gauge, for example, to kind of guide the jewelry through. You just keep that contact with that end of the taper pin, and it'll guide it through the second hole and easily insert it. Also, it's helpful in seeing whether or not a piercing that's been closed for a long period of time is still open, because you can just slide it through there and easily know whether or not it stops in the center or if it's going all the way through. Now, the biggest thing that we use taper pins for, and the biggest huge jump that has been going on for the last couple decades, is to use it for jewelry insertion in areas where it's very tight or impossible to pierce from the direction that we need that back to be on. For example, a nostril piercing, or forward helix piercings, or even an upper ear cartilage, where we want to pierce this way, but we want the jewelry to come in this way. So what we would do is, with just the standard tapers, often what we'll do is pierce it, push the needle out with the taper pin, and then take that thin end and insert it inside that internally threaded or threadless jewelry, and then push it this way. For guiding jewelry in, it's really helpful. You can use either the pin style or even the threaded style to push jewelry out. And then once it's out of there, use it to push it back in. This is really helpful, especially with nostril piercings, where you can't really stick two fingers up inside your nose. So you want something that is going to kind of guide that jewelry in from the inside. So you take the taper pin and you push out the jewelry, take the new jewelry, hook it onto either that pin or the thinner side of the taper, and then use it to guide the jewelry back in and get that flat disc up against the inside of your nose. So taper pins are very, very helpful. You kind of want to determine what type of jewelry you have before you purchase the type. The ones that I listed here, they're threaded and pinned. They're a bit on the short side and might be a little bit difficult to work with. Usually, let's say if you want to put a 18 gauge piece into your nostril, usually a 18 gauge taper will fit easily inside of the post. That moves us on to a piece of a tool that I use consistently over and over and over again. And that is mosquito flat, I guess they're called flat mosquito hemostats. They have a very thin clamping jaw. They lock into place. They're very helpful when you're inserting jewelry into places like the nose or the helix or the trachea, where you can't really grip the jewelry as you're pushing it through. Even with a taper pin, sometimes it's a good idea to have that additional tool to hold the jewelry in a place where you can't get your thumb and your index finger. Then once it's in, especially with threaded jewelry and even non-thread or threadless jewelry, it supports it and holds it in place while you can screw on that that end or push that end in easily. It also makes it very easy to remove it because you can grip it in a tight spot and then use your fingers to unscrew it or pull that end out. Hemostats are an extremely helpful tool. I don't know how you can hold things, you can hold jewelry, you can hold things, and it makes it easier to remove jewelry too because you can get into tight spots, grip it, and etc. That moves us on to circular style jewelry, especially catty bead rings or tension rings type style. When you get into larger gauges, usually for most people, above 12 gauge, it gets very difficult to hand remove that end or that ball that is held in tension, to break that tension and get that out of there. The other thing is that sometimes the jewelry needs to be expanded to wrap around areas of the body where that slit, that little section that's out of there for the ball, can't fit over. So the jewelry needs to be expanded. And to do that, we use expansion pliers. Basically, these are knotted pliers that instead, when you squeeze them, instead of going together, they go outward. Originally used mainly for like hog rings, to be honest with you, and putting various different clamps on things. These are a very useful tool. It's something that if you don't have larger gauge jewelry, you probably won't need, but if you do, eventually they're going to come in handy and they're a good thing to invest in. Now that brings us on to the other side of ring expansion pliers, and that's ring closing pliers. These have a slotted tip on both sides that allow you to kind of grip the ring and squeeze that ring together so that you can recreate the amount of tension you need. One thing I did forget to mention with ring expansion pliers is it makes it very easy to remove the ball and then line it up and put it back in without having to strain against that tension. Lastly, the last type of tool that I'm going to suggest that you pick up are, and I like brass tip. You're going to pay a little bit more for it, but in the long run, they're going to last longer and they're going to do less damage to your jewelry. This is very useful with seamless or fixed bead rings where you want to bend the jewelry into a corkscrew to remove it and then bend it back to put it back in. They can also be used for captive bead rings the same way to get it over those areas without having to worry about expanding and contracting them and getting everything back to where it's going to work correctly. So brass tipped, flat jeweler's pliers are what I suggest. Like I said, they are not cheap, but they are a tool that once you have it, you'll probably never have to buy another one. And they're really good with gripping jewelry and bending it and creating that corkscrew effect. So that's it. 5 things that'll make your life easier when you're changing jewelry. Hope you learned something. If you feel like I missed something or you have additional suggestions, please leave a comment. I love answering them, and I love spreading knowledge, and I love learning new things. If you liked the video and found it, especially if you found it informative, hit that thumbs up. Let us know that you like it, because we like it when you like it. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We post roughly 4 to 5 videos a week with a focus on education about tattooing and body piercing. So if you like that kind of stuff and you want to learn more, subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you'd like to look stylish and support the channel and show your love of body art, check out our merch store. Lots of good swag on there with various different designs designed here by the artists of the Axiom in the Skin Kitchen. Here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future. Thank you for watching. Have a good day, everybody. Go out there and make someone else smile.